Good day, grade 11s, and welcome to Mathematical Literacy. My name is Hayley, and today I'm going to be taking you through percentage and context. First of all, let's start off with a definition. So what is a percentage? A percentage is a portion of a whole, where the whole is 100. Let's think of it as a cake. If I look at my cake, a full cake is 100%. But if I cut a slice of cake, then I've got a fraction of a whole. I've got a fraction of the cake, and that is exactly what percentage is. So every percentage is a fraction out of 100, which is the whole, or in our case, the cake. For this reason, when we write a percentage as a fraction, its denominator is always 100. So, for example, 40% is actually 40 out of 100. And then to get it as a decimal, we can just plug it into our calculator and say 40 divided by 100, and we see that it is 0,4. So those are the shorthands of writing a percentage. Percentage has been adopted quite comfortably into day-to-day language because it's easier to visualize, it's easier to visualize, it's easier to comprehend or understand what a percentage than an actual amount. Let's look at this example that I have here. It would make sense to say that a candidate got 70% of the votes. I can understand what that means. But if I say Karen got 4,389 of the 6,270 votes, I've already lost most of the people out there when I started talking about these big numbers. But as soon as I say 70%, it makes sense and I can actually understand she did really well on these elections. It also makes it easier to compare values. If I say, look at the statement, 37.5% of the population got ill this year in comparison with 44.4% last year, it makes sense that the number went down. I can see that it went down quite drastically from 44.4% to 37.5%. But had I been looking at the statement and said 3/8 of the population got ill this year compared to 4/9 last year, I'm totally lost. I've got no idea which is the bigger amount. So when dealing with percentage and comparisons, it's a whole lot easier. And remember that fact, if they ever ask you in a test or in an exam or in an exercise to compare two sets of data, you normally have to take it to a percentage because it's easier to compare. Hey, when dealing with our percentage, there are basically 5 different types of questions that you will experience. And these are the easy marks that you can pick up because percentage comes in to almost every single question that you will see. So let's go through all the theory and then we'll look at some examples. So, first kind of way to deal with percentage is to find out how much the total is in a percent. So, for example, Tandi got 20 out of 25 for her test. How much is the percentage of the total? Now, when dealing with this kind of question, when it asks you how much is the percentage, there are a few key words that I want you to look at in the question. First of all, as soon as it says percentage, we know we have to times by 100. As soon as you see percentage, it is times by 100. And then we're looking for this little word of the. Now, let's erase that. Of the. Of the what is your question that you need to ask yourself, and in this case it is of the total. So we take Tandi's mark, which was 20, of the total, divide by 25, somehow my times disappeared here, times by 100, or 100 over 1, and we get our solution. Let's try that on the calculator. On the calculator, you'll probably find it easiest to use your fraction button. So we'll go ahead and use our fraction. She got 20 marks out of a total of 25. And then times by 100, or you can do it as 100 over 1 and equals, we get 80%. Don't forget, let's go back here, don't forget to add your percentage sign. That unit is totally crucial. It is 80%. It is not 80 Smarties or 80 flowers or 80 marks. It is 80%. Let's try the next one. So if we work out the percentage of 2/5. Oh, on our calculator, we're going to use our fraction button, 2 divided by 5, and then we want a percentage. So what did I tell you? We need to multiply by 100 equals 40%. So we can write it into here. That equals to 40%. Okay, we actually do have the calculation there. You can see it as well. You don't need to use the fraction button. I just think that it is easier, but you can say 2 divided by 5, press equals, and times by 100. Right. The next type of question that you're going to be asked is, if you're given the percentage, find out the amount of that percentage. So let's look at an example. An article costs 15 Rand and VAT is 5%. Don't we wish VAT was 5%? While we're talking about VAT, we must remember that VAT is in fact 14%. Just in case they don't give it to you in an exam, but they should. So in this case, we're dealing with VAT of 5%. How would you work out the amount due? So we can do this in two ways. I'm going to take you through both ways, and then we'll move on. So the first thing we need to do is we need to work out how much is 5% of the 15. And how we do that is we multiply by 5%. So we take our original amount, and I'm going to do this on the calculator for you. So we take our original amount, that was 15 Rand. We always multiply percentage. So times by 5, and then our percentage button, which in this case we need to shift, and it's above the open bracket. So 15 times 5%, and I get equals, and it is 0.75. 0.75 Rand. So let's go back to here. We can see that our answer was 0.75, and that should actually be rands. And that is just the 5% of the original. We need to add the VAT because we want to know what the total amount that we are paying is. So we say 15 Rand plus the 0.75, and we end up with 15 Rand 75. That is the total that we're paying. There's an easier way of calculating this. And the easier way is every time you have to increase by a percentage, we say our 15 Rand and we times it by 105%. The 100 actually gives us, let's move down the page a little bit, see if I can find some more space. Right. We had our 15 Rand. When we multiplied it by 5% and got our 75 cents, we then added the 15 Rand plus the 75 cents. And then we got our answer. This is 100%, and that is my 5%. So in total, what I'm adding here is 105%. So to make it easier for us to actually calculate, I can do this in one step. And I can say 15 Rand times by, because it's a percentage, 105%. And once we do that on the calculator, you'll see that it does it all for us in one step, 105%. And we get our answer, which was 15 Rand 75. So exactly the same answer, but basically done in one step less. So the rule is when you are adding or increasing by a certain percent, you always say 100 plus that percent. So if I had to increase something by VAT at 14%, I would multiply by 114%. So let's go back to our example that we had. Right, so that was our one step. Let's look at another example. I exchange 1,250 Rand in foreign exchange and then pay 12% commission fee. How much in total do I pay to the cashier? So first I'm going to do it the old way, and then I'll do it the new way. We'll do it both ways. So I'm going to take my 1,250 Rand times by 12%, and I see that that answer is 150 Rand. And then that's my commission. What do I pay in total? And this is a trick that you can learn right now. Always go back to the question and reread the question. Have you actually answered what they're asking you? So in this case, they wanted the total that we pay. So that was our original amount plus the commission, and in total we pay 1,400 Rand. In one step, and I'll do the one step on the calculator, we can say our 1,200 Rand times by 112% and get an answer. So let's try that on the calculator. It was 1,250 times by 112%, and we get an answer of 1,400 Rand. Okay, now let's move on to the next example. The butcher increases his price by 8%. If mince was 21.99 Rand per kilo, what would we pay now for 1 kilogram? First, let's analyze the question. They're asking us what will be the total price, including the increase of 8%. So we're going to take our 21.99 times by 8% to get our actual increase, which was 1.76 Rand. And then we're going to add it to the total because they're asking us what we would pay now, which is basically my total that I'm going to pay. So 21.99 plus 1.76 Rand, and we will now pay 23.75 Rand. All in one step. 21.99 times by, what's the percentage? It's 100 plus the 8% increase, and we get it as 23.75 Rand. Before I move on, I actually would like to explain how we can do the same concept on one step when we've got a decrease. So if I take my, let's call it 100 Rand, and I want to decrease it because I'm going and buying something for 100 Rand and I'm getting, let's say, a 10% discount. What is the new price that I pay? So first of all, I can do it in two ways again. I'm going to show you the quick way. So first I'm going to show you the long way. 100 Rand, let's calculate what is the percentage. So it's times by 10%. Let's do that on our calculator just in case we need to. 100 times by 10%, and we see that that is 10 Rand. So going back to this, that is 10 Rand. Now it is a discount, so I'm taking my original amount minus 10 Rand, and the total that I pay will now be 90 Rand. So let's try this to do this in one step. When we were increasing by percentage, I said take 100% and add the percentage. Now we're decreasing, so we're going to take 100% and we're going to minus our 10%, which leaves me with 90%. And the calculation is exactly the same now. We take our original 100 Rand, we're going to times it by 90%. We're going to do that on the calculator. So we've got our 100 Rand times by 90%, and we see that it is 90 Rand. And just make sure it's 90 Rand. Make sure that the answer that you get is less than the original. 90 Rand is less than 100, so I'm probably on the right track. So percentage increase and percentage decrease, you can both do the simple way and the way I've just explained. Right, let's see what our next type of example is. If we're given the new amount to find out the original amount of something. So this is kind of working backwards. This is probably the hardest type of question you will get in percentage, and I really need to focus on the new way that we've been dealing of timesing by the 100 plus the percentage. So let's look at an example. If the price of an article after the 5% VAT is added is 15 Rand 75, what is the cost excluding VAT? Before I go to my calculations that I've got here, I actually want to analyze what is the question saying. The question is saying I've got an original amount, I have multiplied it by 105%, and I get an answer of 15 Rand 75. I hope you can all see that that is what it says. So let's analyze it again. The price of an article after 5% VAT was added, so that's how I'm adding my 5%, is 15 Rand 75. So that is my answer. What was the cost excluding? So this is the solution that we actually need. We're looking for this original price. So how do I get the original price? I take my answer, 15 Rand 75, and I divide by 105%, because then I'm going to get my original on its own. And that's what we've done here. Let's do it on the calculator. So we've taken our original amount, which was 15 Rand 75. We've divided it by 105%, and we get 15 Rand. So let's go back and see. Our answer is 15 Rand. I'm just going to find some more paper, because this is what you're going to tend to do, and I want to show you how this is wrong. You're going to read that question and you're going to say, well, it was 15 Rand 75 with VAT. So now I'm going to work out what the VAT was, and you're going to say 5%, and you're going to get a solution. And let's do that solution. So it's 15 Rand 75 times by 5%, and you're going to see that it was 0.79 cents. Okay, so let's go back to there. It is 0.79. And then your instinct is going to be to take my 15 Rand 75 and minus 0.79. This is very, very wrong. So let's see what that answer was, and I'll explain why. 15 Rand 75 minus 0.79, and we get 14 Rand 96. So let's go back here and write in our answer. That was 14 Rand 96. Now this is why I'm telling you that this is wrong. 14 Rand 96, what I should be able to do is take that and add my 105% and get my original answer. So let's check that out and see if that works. I've got my 14 Rand 96 on the calculator already. If I times that by 105%, I get an answer of 15 Rand 71. It's not the 15 Rand 75 that we originally had. So you need to deal with it the way I showed you above, where you need to actually write out the sentence and divide by that percentage. And this is the reason why it is wrong. We can cross that all out because that is incorrect. Let's go back and look at another example. If I had 1,400 Rand and went to exchange money but had to pay a 12% commission, how much money would I exchange? So again, we need to take our 1,400 Rand minus the 12%, but that 12% is on an original amount. So again, I'm going to write it for you. So I've got my original amount. I times that by 112%, and I ended up with 1,400 Rand. So the only way I can actually get that original amount is by dividing by 112% on both sides, and those cancel, so I've got my original is my 1,400 Rand divided by 112%, and I get my answer of 1,250. And now let's look at our butcher. After a drastic price increase of 8%, I paid 23 Rand 75 for 1 kilogram of mince. How much did the mince previously cost? Once again, what am I doing? I'm taking my final amount, that 23 Rand 75, dividing by 100 and my percentage, so dividing by 108%, and I get 21 Rand 99. Right, let's move on. Let's see what the next thing that percentage has to offer. If you're given two amounts, we need to find the percentage increase or decrease. Now be careful with the terminology. This percentage increase or percentage decrease is not the amount of money that it was increased or the amount of money it was decreased. In our previous example, we were dealing with there was an increase. What was the amount that was increased? Now we're dealing with a percentage increase. So my answer needs to be a percentage. So the way we do this is we take our new amount minus the initial amount, divide by the initial amount, and we're dealing with a percentage, so it's times by 100. Let's look at an example, and I don't seem to have an example on here, so we're going to create one. Let's think about bread. Right. If I had to look at bread, and I'm totally making up these numbers, in 2009, let's say bread cost us 8 Rand 50. In 2010, bread now costs us 9 Rand 95. What is the percentage increase? So we take our and this is a formula that you need to actually study. Let's try a different color. We need to learn that formula. So we take our new amount. Our new amount is the latest amount. That's what I mean by new amount. So in this case, it was 9 Rand 95 minus the initial amount, that was the old amount, 8 Rand 50, and I'm dividing it. So that is the amount increased. I'm dividing it by my old amount, my initial amount, because I want to know how much is increased from the previous. It's a percentage, so I'm going to times by 100. Let's do that on the calculator. So I'm going to use my fraction button. 9 Rand 95 minus 8 Rand 50 divided by 8 Rand 50. Now you can see when I'm typing into my calculator, I've left off these zeros. The zeros after the decimal don't mean anything on the calculator, but remember they mean a lot in your books and when you're answering questions, because money must be 2 decimal places. But if you'd like, you can add the zeros. They're really not going to have any effect. And we're going to times that by 100. And I get an answer of 17.06%. So let's write that in here. My answer is 17.06%. That is the amount that bread increased from 2009 to 2010 with these fictitious made-up numbers. Let's now do a percentage decrease. So let's look at another example. So let's say money is the easiest thing to deal with. So let's say I pay 250 Rand for a bag. But I go into the shop, so this was in, let's say, in 2009. Right, and then I go into the shop this year, and in actual fact, the bag is cheaper. And now the bag is 230 Rand for the same bag, and that was in 2010. What is my percentage change or my percentage decrease? And I can see that the bag has gone cheaper. So our formula, let's go back to just remind you the formula, was the new amount minus the initial amount divided by the initial amount. So in this case, my new amount my new amount is the latest amount. So my new amount is 230. My initial amount was 250. Divided by my initial amount of 250. And it's a percentage I need to times by 100. So let's take out our calculators and use the calculator. Fraction button, 230 minus 250 divided by 250 and times by 100. And I get an answer of minus 8. This minus is important. So that is, let me explain. That is, let's get a solution. Move this down a little bit. Minus 8%. I don't really talk about percentage as a negative number. So what does this minus actually mean? This minus means that I had an 8% decrease in price. So my answer, I make it a positive number, because when dealing with percentage, we always deal with positives, and the minus means decrease. So it's an 8% decrease. Does it make sense? It does, because my bag actually became cheaper. Right, let's move on to the final way that you're going to see percentage. And if you're given a percentage, convert it into a common fraction. And this is really very easy marks. We've been dealing with a percentage, we've been dealing with them as fractions and on the calculator. So now just being able to answer that simple question is kind of question, convert 25% to a common fraction. Well, we discussed it. What is 25%? We said 25%. 25% is 25 divided by 100. So all I need to do is actually take 25 divided by 100 on the calculator, press equals, let's see what we've got, and 25 divided by 100, and I get my common fraction, my simplest fraction, which is a quarter. So I can go back to this and write that in as a quarter. They can also ask me to do it as a decimal, so how are we going to do that? We're going to press our SD button, and then we'll set it as 0.25. Nothing hard about it. These are easy marks, so look out for those easy marks. Right, let's now look at some examples of how you will actually see these percentages in the context. So first, let's do our question 1, and let's just read through the entire question, and then we will start the calculations. Right. Since the government requires revenue on an ongoing basis, employers must subtract PAYE, and it gives you the definition of PAYE, it's pay as you earn, from the employee's salary and pay it over to SARS, the South African Revenue Services, every month. Now we're looking at Patsy Smith. Patsy Smith works in sales department for United Industries and receives a gross salary of 10,560. I'm actually going to write this 10,560 Rand. That's her salary. During the 2006-2007 tax year. Every month, PAYE and contributions to the pension fund, medical aid and unemployment insurance fund are deducted from her salary. Gross salary means the salary before all the deductions. Table 1 shows one of the month's pay slips for the tax year 2006-2007. Now, that's table 1. I'll go to table 1. Let's finish reading. Patsy needed to calculate her tax liability, that is, how much tax does she have to pay, and to check whether the PAYE tax that was subtracted from her salary was sufficient for the 2006-2007 tax year. Before I carry on, let's go through this, just tax a little bit more detail. Every month, the employer takes off PAYE from your salary. They've done their calculations and they deduct an amount. At the end of the tax year, which is normally in February, you have to submit a tax return to the receiver. and they do a calculation on your entire salary and all your deductions that you are allowed. You're allowed to take medical aid, your pension, retirement insurance. There are a whole lot of various deductions that are allowed by the receiver. Sometimes that PAYE that you have paid is too much, and what will happen is you will get a refund from the receiver. And other times that PAYE that is deducted is too little, and you will be forced to pay the receiver more. So the PAYE is there to assist you so that you don't have this lump sum that you have to pay at the end of the tax year. Let's go back to Patsy. So Patsy's payslip, and this is for December of 2007. I'm just going to go through the entire payslip and see what we've got. So she works for United Industries. We've got our pay date. She got paid on the 24th of December. Her name, she's got a staff number, and she's in sales. We know that already. On her payslip, she's got her ID number, date of birth, job title, her tax reference number, which is really important. That's the reference number that the receiver would have. So we've got her marital status, bank account number, and various other details that we need, the bank, right, and then we go through her actual payments. She gets her salary. There's her basic salary. Remember we said there was a basic salary of 10,560. Being December, she received a bonus of 10,560. That's the exact same amount as her basic salary. It'll come up in one of our questions. The pay as you earn that is deducted is 1,918 Rand and 77 cents. And it's been deducted twice. Why has it been deducted twice? We've got 2 full salaries. But her pension has been deducted once. That's 7.5% of her monthly salary, medical aid contribution, and the unemployment insurance fund, which is normally 1% of your salary. So if we had to add these two together, we would see that it actually is 1% of both amounts. Her net pay, just now we were dealing with gross salary, that was her gross, that was before deductions. Net is after deductions. She ends up taking home 15,974 Rand and 34 cents. That was paid into her bank account. All right, let's see what the questions ask. In December each year, Patsy receives a bonus of a non-pensionable. Non-pensionable means that they do not deduct the 7.5% of her monthly salary. So it's non-pensionable means she gets the entire amount without the deduction. 13th check. Only tax is subtracted from the 13th check. So now calculate her gross annual salary, including her bonus. So let's see, her gross annual salary, she basically earned 10,560 Rand per month. That was her salary. She actually earned that for 13 months. So we can just multiply by 13. Or we can say, well, okay, let's multiply it by 12. That's going to give me my annual salary plus a 13th check. So either one of those calculations will actually get you to her gross salary. Let's do that on the calculator. So she earns 10,560 times by, I'll do the 12, plus another 10,560, and we get an answer of 137,280. So she earns 137,280. I'm just going to go check that I've got that number correct. 137,280. That is her gross salary. Really simple calculation. That's including her bonus. Right, let's move on to part B of this question. During the 2006-2007 year, Patsy had an amount of 150,000 Rand invested in a South African money market account at an interest rate of 7.2% compounded half yearly. So what does the question now actually ask us? I'm going to highlight the 150,000 and let's look at the question. It says calculate the interest she received during the 2006-2007 tax year using the following formula. So let's look at our question. We've got 150,000 Rand, that is my P. My interest rate of 7.2%, that is my I. And compounded half yearly is my number, my N. So let's do this calculation. I'm going to actually write out each one of these. And if you get into the habit of writing these out, it might make it a little bit easier for you to actually answer the question. A is what I'm looking for. P is my initial amount, which we said was 150,000 Rand. I was 7.2%. I'm going to go up and check that that was 7.2%. And I'm dealing with one financial year. So my term is one financial year. But both of these I've got a problem with. So let's change color so we can deal with the problem. 7.2% is for the entire year, but I want to actually write this as a decimal. It'll be easier in my formula. So it's 7.2%, which I can write as 7.2 of 100. Compounded half yearly means that it is compounded twice a year. So it's 7.2% for the entire year. I want to know how much it is every time it is compounded. So compounded half yearly basically means that we've got twice a year. I need to account for that in my percentage. So it's my 7.2%, and I'm actually going to times this by 2, because it actually works out as half of that every time it is compounded. So let's just calculate that on the calculator. So I've got my 7.2 for the year as a percentage, not 1,000, 100, and I'm going to times that by 2, or basically we can do this in 2 steps. At 0,036 is what the number that I need to write. There, so that was 0,036, and in actual fact I'm going to put it into there. 0,036 as a percentage. I'm going to do this calculation just for you one more time, just in case it's confused you. We had 7.2%. 7.2% for the year. I'm going to write it as a fraction, as a decimal like that. And that was for the whole year, but it was compounded half yearly, which means it was compounded twice. So I'm going to take my answer and divide by 2, and I get my same answer of 0,036. So a rule of thumb, if you want, every time you get a percentage and you need to calculate the amount per compound period, take your percentage as a fraction out of 100 and you times your 100 by how many compound periods are there in that year. Why are we dealing with 1 year? Didn't give us the time that this was invested for, but we're dealing with Patsy's tax, and we're dealing with her tax only in a year period. So that is why I said that my number of years was 1, but I had 2 compound periods. So I'm actually going to take that and times by 2, and I'm going to write it in as my n being 2. Now we can actually rewrite the formula with the numbers. So I've got A equals to my 150,000 Rand, open my bracket, 1 plus my percentage, 0,036, to the power of 2. And we can plug that into the calculator. 150,000. And be careful when you're dealing with numbers like this, be careful that you've got all the zeros. Don't make a mistake and leave out a 0. So now I've got my 1 plus 0,036, close the brackets, to the power of 2. Well, I could have just pressed the square button and I get an equals to 160,994.40. So let's write that in. It's 160,994.4, and remember it is money, so it needs to have 2 decimal places. Just want to double check that I've got the number correct. 160,994.40. Perfect. That's what she has in the bank at the end of the year. Did that answer my question? I don't think it did. Somehow it said calculate the interest that she received during the 2006-2007 tax year. So I have calculated what she has in the bank at the end of that time. I need to use this formula. I've lost my pen. I need to use that formula. The interest is what she started with. So let's calculate our interest. Our interest is what we have in the bank minus what did she actually start with, which was 150,000. So our interest amount is just the difference between the two, and we can do that on the calculator. We've already got my number that's of total, so now all I need to do is minus my 150,000, and I see that my solution is 10,994. So that is the interest that she has earned in the year. Go back, double check that I've actually read the question. Calculate the interest she received. I now know that I have got this question correct. I have answered the question. Let's see what the next question actually says. Right, so we've calculated this. The second part of the question then says a tax exemption. I'm going to use a different color. A tax exemption. A tax is allowed on interest earned in investments in a South African bank. This means there is a certain amount of money that you can earn as interest where you do not have to pay tax on. And the reason for this is that the receiver and the government want to encourage you to save money. So there's a certain amount earned on investments in a South African bank. So the taxpayer is allowed to subtract a given amount from the interest earned and only pay tax on the remaining portion. So tax exemption for individuals younger than 65 years of age is 16,500, and for individuals 65 years and older is 24,500. They want to encourage you to earn more, to save more when you are older. We've got to write down the amount that Patsy must pay on tax. First of all, how old was Patsy? So let's go back to our question, and we can see from our birth date that Patsy is under 65. So which exemption is she able to take? She's able to take that exemption. How do we calculate the exemption? We take our tax amount that she actually earned, which was our 10,994 rand and 40 cents. That's what she earned. We're now going to minus the amount of the exemption. That doesn't look like a 6. Let's try that again. Right, let's do that on our calculator. So we have the amount that she earned in tax. We're going to minus the exemption, 16,500, and you notice that we get a negative value. So I'm going to just, the value actually is not important. We had a negative number, which basically means we had a negative number. This means that the amount that she earned in tax was less than the amount that was exempt. So because it was less, she is allowed a full exemption. So she does not have to pay any tax. So she basically has no tax payable on her investment. So whenever you get a negative number, it does not mean that the receiver now owes you that money. It just means that it is less than the amount you're allowed to exempt, therefore you do not pay tax. So we've got to write down the amount that she must pay on tax on and the amount that she must pay tax on is basically nil. She does not have to pay tax on any amount. Double checking that we've actually answered the question, write down the amount we have so we can move on. Right, what's our next part of the question? Then says, write down the total income received on which she must pay tax. So, her tax that she needed to pay on was her gross salary and possibly any investments. She doesn't have to pay tax on the investments, so her total amount that she must pay was our gross salary, and we're going to have to go back and check what our gross salary was. Our gross salary was 137,280, 137,280. That is her amount that she must pay tax on. We can also have a look for those like little clues, the questions that have 1 mark questions. They're normally something we've calculated before, something that's clear and evident in the question. So that is just our total that we pay. Right, now let's move on, and I think we're going to start dealing with her deductions. Before the final tax payable is calculated, all pension fund contributions and all medical aid contributions that are less than 500 Rand per month are subtracted from the income received. So as Patsy pays 495 Rand per month on medical aid, she's able to subtract her full contribution before her final tax is calculated. If she had paid more, let's just deal with that quickly. If she had paid 600 Rand for medical aid, she could deduct a total of 500. So she can deduct a maximum of 500 Rand, but also a maximum of what she earned. So what she pays. She pays 495 Rand, which is less than 500, which means she can claim the maximum that she pays. So let's calculate her annual medical aid contributions. Annual medical aid contributions is 495 Rand, and she pays that for 12 months. Remember, she does not pay medical aid on her 13th check, on her bonus. So it is just 12 months, and that's a simple calculation. 495 times by 12, and we get 5,940. So that is her annual medical aid contribution. Next part of the question says, we need her annual pension fund contribution. Right. Her annual pension fund. Now, her pension fund, we said, was 7.5% of her monthly salary, which has already been calculated for you. So it is 792 Rand per month, and that is again for 12 months. So 792 Rand times by 12 months, and we get our solution. Need a calculator for that. Right, so we've got our medical aid, and now we should have our pension fund contribution on the calculator. So let's check what that was, 9504. So let's write that in. So it was 9504. And now let's get our total for that. And going back to the calculator, we've got our pension fund contribution. So we're going to just add our 5940, add our medical aid, and in total she can deduct 15,444. So the total for that is 15,444. Double check, have we actually answered the question? Her total medical aid and pension fund contributions, and again, 1 mark. It was an easy calculation. We had done all the work. Let's move on and see what the next part of the question asks us. So, Patsy's taxable income. So how are we going to work out her taxable income? Taxable income is her gross income. Let's write this right. Her taxable income is her gross salary minus all the deductions that she is allowed to claim from her salary. So her gross salary, if you remember correctly, was 137,280 Rand. Minus our deductions, and let's just double check that, was 15,444. We'll go back to that. 15,444. And we get our total that she actually has to pay tax on. That's her taxable income. So let's do this calculation on the calculator. Now I've got the deductions on my calculator already. I've just calculated those. So how do I do the calculations without clearing, because that number's already there, is I type in, don't clear anything, I type in her gross salary, which was 137,280, and I'm going to minus the answer that I had on my calculator before, and I get an answer of 121,836. So it's 121,836. So let's write that in there, 121,836. Again, just need to double check that I actually got those numbers correct. 121,836. That is her taxable salary. So if we answered the question, we have answered the question. So let's move on to the next part of the question. Right, no, we need to start reading from the top. South Africa has a progressive income tax system. This means that the more one earns, the more tax one pays. So table 2 below shows the tax rates for the 2006-2007 tax year. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the tax years for the assessment ending February 2007, or the 2006-2007 year. This is what they mean by a progressive income table. For the first 100,000 Rand of income, taxable income that you earn, you pay 18% of each Rand. Thereafter, you go into the next tax bracket, which means you're paying 18% of the first 100,000 and an additional 25% of the amount above 100. That 18,000 Rand over there accounts for 18% of each Rand 1 and 25% of the amount above 100. And then you move into the next tax bracket. So we basically end up almost, I'm going to show this to you because it's quite an interesting table. We're going to end up with, let's look at it as a table like that. The first lot of tax that you pay is 18%. Then you pay 18% of the same amount, but you pay 25% of the next little bit. And then you pay the next tax bracket, you still pay 18% of that first 100,000, then 25% of the next little bit, and then you move on to the next, which in this case was 30%. So you pay 30% for the next little bit. So this is what we mean by a progressive table. So I hope that makes tax a little bit clearer for you so that you can understand it. Let's go back to the question. So once we've analyzed a little bit of the table, the question says, calculate the total tax payable on Patsy's taxable income. So we need to use the table to calculate the tax payable. First, let's go back and get the amount that she paid in tax. That was 121,836. So she earns 121,836. That is her taxable income. Now we're going to use that amount to actually calculate the tax payable. I need to find out where this value fits into the tax table. Is it between 0 and 100? No, so it's not that one. Is it between 100 and 160,000 Rand? Yes, it is. So this is the amount that I am going to be using to calculate her taxable income. I'm going to write that out exactly as I see it there. So it is, let's make this a little more, but it basically said 18,000 Rand plus, let's go back to that, 18,000 Rand plus 25% of the amount above, plus 25% of is always multiply the amount above 100,000. So I need to take my salary that she earns minus 100,000 Rand. Because we only want the amount above 100,000 Rand. And that is the calculation that we need to do. So go back to the table. It's 18,000 Rand she pays, irrespective, 25% of, we said, was multiply the amount above 100,000. So whenever we see the amount above, we can basically minus that amount. Let's do the calculation now that we have. I'm going to do this in 2 steps. I'm going to leave my 18,000 there. And 25% of, I want to do this calculation. Now, I don't think we need a calculator for this, but in case you do and you want to use your calculator, go right ahead. But 121,000 minus 100,000 leaves us with 21,836 Rand. Now I need my calculator. So I'm going to do this again in 2 steps. I'm going to keep my 18,000 there, and I'm going to calculate what that 21% is on my calculator. In fact, I've got my numbers, so I might as well first minus my 100,000, which leaves me with my 21,836 Rand, and I'm going to times by 25%. I want that amount that it is, and that amount is 5,459 Rand. So back to here. So we've got 5,400 and I can't remember what that was, 59. So what does she pay in total in tax? We now can add these. Go back to the calculator. I'm going to add my 18,000 Rand, and she needs to pay 23,459. So it was 23,459. Was it 459? If I can double check that. 23,459. That is the total that she needs to pay for the tax. Have I answered the question I'm going back to ask? It asks you for the total tax payable on Patsy's taxable income, and I have answered that question. So that is my answer. Let's move on to the next part of the question. What are they asking now? We need to calculate, Fale, her annual PAYE deduction. Okay, so let's see, how much did she actually pay as pay as you earn? So we first need to go back to her pay slip to see what that amount was. I know we've got a pay slip here somewhere. She paid, yeah, what happened there? Now I'm lost.
Let's try that again.
I'm lost.
Go forward, maybe it's that page.
Yeah.
Okay, so just undo that and just pick up again.
So can I pick up from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And action.
She paid 1,918 Rand and 77 cents on every salary that she earned, plus on her bonus. So we can actually take this number. Let's move forward. So it was 191877. One nine 1877. Okay, and she paid that every month, and she paid it on 13 salary slips, on 13 amounts of money. So we can multiply it by 13, and let's do that on the calculator. It was 1918.77 times 13, and we get an answer of 249.44 and 1 cent. So we can write that in here. 2494401. That is the amount that her company actually took of her salary and paid towards the receiver. So that is what she paid in total for the whole year. And let's see what the next part of the question actually asks us. Now it says, was sufficient PAYE tax deducted from Patsy's gross salary during the tax year to cover her total tax payable? And we need to give a reason for our answer. So how are we going to calculate what was sufficient? First of all, they took off 24, I'm going to go back to that last page, 2494401. That is what she paid as PAYE. So that's what the receiver has of her money. How much did she have to pay was the calculation that we did. I wonder if that's no longer on the calculator. So let's go back to that question, which was a question before that. She had to pay 23,459. 23,459. That's what she had to pay. This was her tax that was due. And we need to just answer the question, was it sufficient? So how are we going to work that out? Let's see, the tax that she had to pay minus the tax that was payable, that was already paid. And let's do that on the calculator. So we've got that answer in, so we can just type in 23,459 minus the amount that she has paid, and you see that we get a negative value. So let's write in our negative. It's 14 minus 14. And the calculator 1485.01. So what does that negative mean? That negative means that she has overpaid. So Patsy has overpaid 1,485 Rand and 1 cent. So that is the amount of money that the receiver has to pay back to Patsy. Right, let's move on to question 2. So start off by reading it. In February 2007, a large-scale community survey was conducted in all 9 provinces in South Africa. The table below shows the results of the survey, showing the number of people using electricity for lighting and having access to tap water in each province in South Africa. Now, before we carry on with the question, let's analyze what our table actually shows us. So, I'm going to go through the table in quite a lot of detail. First, it's got all 9 provinces, Free State, Gauteng, etc., etc., etc. And at the bottom, we've got South Africa, which would probably give us a total. So let's go through the next column. That's our total population. So we can see that the Free State actually in 2007 comprised of 2,773,059 people. So that's our total population, is the number of people. Under our South African column, we can see that that is the total amount of people in South Africa when the survey was done. Now we're looking at the number of people using electricity for lighting. So this is the number of people using in each province. And then we've got a C, which we know clearly later we're going to have to calculate that. And then they've given us the percentage using electricity for lighting. So that percentage, and before I move on, I'm actually going to try and work out how they got that percentage. Because if you can work out what they did in the table, it helps you answer all the questions. So let's try and work out how they got that 86.6%. They were looking at percentage using electricity, so it is the number of people using electricity, and percentage is out of our total. So I'm going to guess, and I'm going to then calculate it, that 86.6 was the number of people using electricity in the Free State divided by the total population of the Free State, and percentage times by 100. So before I carry on, let's double check that that actually works. I've got 2401,469 divided by my total of 2773,059. I'm going to press equals, times by 100 because it's a percentage, and I see that it is 86,59 recurring, which we round off to 86,6. So already I'm at an advantage that I understand where that amount came from. Then we're looking at the number of people having access to piped water, and in this case it was 2703,733. And again, there's a percentage, so my guess is that it's the same way, and I'm just going to double check it. So if I double check, so let's double check that. It was, now we get, that amount was 2703,733 divided by my total of 2773,059, again times by 100. And that didn't work. Where did I make my mistake? Let's try that again. So 2703,733 divided by 2773,059 times 100. And I see that it's 97,5, which is exactly what they gave me in the table. So I see with that 97,5. Now the rest of the table is all going to work the same way. So now I know that I can answer all these questions that they're going to throw at me, calculate C and D and all the rest of it. So let's see what the questions are. So, in fact, there's the first question. What does the missing value of C in the table represent? But it's not asking you to calculate the value, it's just asking you what it represents. So be careful when you're reading the question that you don't give too much detail and go, oh, I know how to calculate C, and quickly do the calculation. That's not what they've actually asked you. They've asked you what it represents. So looking at the table, what does C represent? C represents the number of people using electricity for lighting in Gauteng. So that's all we need to write in here. It represents the number of people using electricity for lighting, and where are they using it? In Gauteng. And my guess is that that would be your two marks. So what does it represent, and where would it represent? So in Gauteng. And now we've answered that question. So let's move on to the next question. Looking at our table again, it now says calculate the following missing values. Give each answer rounded to the nearest unit. And this is the kind of question that is crucial that you go back to check, have you actually answered? So we know that we need to do it to the nearest unit. So first they want us to represent A. So what is A? A is South Africa, and it is the total number of people having access to piped water. So all we need to do in A is to add up all these values. We're going to add up all the values and it'll give us A. So we're going to need a calculator, and we're going to have to add all these up. So it was 2703,733 plus 10,232, 227 plus the next number is 1,003,041. I'm going to add it to 459,534. I'm going to press equals just in case my calculator starts hassling with all these big numbers. I'm going to press equals and add some more. So I've now got 2941,481 plus 8145,829. That's not an 8. 829 plus 4379,207. Press equals again and add it again. 3345,526. Last one, 5,215,242. And I get my total of 42,561,820. So I'm going to write that in. Right. So it was not money, it was people. 42,500. I can't remember what that number was. 561,820. 561,820. Does the amount make sense? I need to have less than the population because I can see all my percentages are less than 100%. So that amount does make sense that it would be adding up all of those. Have I answered the question correctly. It says calculate the following missing values. Give each answer rounded off to the nearest unit. That is the nearest unit, so I have answered that question correctly. Let's see what the next question asks. Calculate the missing value for B. Now this calculation is a little bit more complicated than A, and you can see that by your mark allocation. My instinct, and I know your instinct, is to add up all of these like we did in A. Here we added. So why don't we just add up all of these? But I can't add up these. These are percentages. This is percentage using electricity for lighting. So if I add these up, I'm going to end up with way more than 100%. And we cannot have a percentage of South Africans, more than 100% of South Africans using lighting. So we need to actually calculate it the same way we calculated our 86.6 for the Free State. We're going to take our total number of people using electricity and divide it by our total number of people in South Africa. So let's do that calculation. Let's get a little bit more space here. So I'm going to write it, it's going to be my 38,569,410 people that use electricity out of the total amount of people in South Africa, which was 48,502,063. And I want a percentage, so how do I do that? Times by 100. So let's do that on our calculator. So we've got, we can clear that now, 38,569,410 divided by 48,502,063 and times by 100. And I get an answer of 79.52%. They've been rounding these all to one decimal place. Let's write that in, 79.52, 79.52. Now, all of these have been rounded to one decimal place. So I can round it to one decimal place. Reading the question though, the question says give each answer rounded off to the nearest unit. So I need to round this to the nearest unit, which makes it 79.5. We'll round up to 80%. Be careful of those little marks where they tell you how to round it, because normally there's a mark allocated for that, and those are the marks that you sometimes tend to lose. I've answered the question, you knew what you were doing, and you move on to the next question. Don't forget, go back, reread the question, because it's often those little things that you tend to miss out. So let's move on to the next part of the question. Right, it now wants us to calculate C. So we kind of had a feeling we would need to calculate C, and you might have done it already if you had not read the question correctly. So now they want to know C. C, again, a little bit of a more complicated question. We want to know the number of people. In Gauteng, I've got 10 million odd people, and 83.5% of them are using electricity. So the way I calculate is actually take my number of people in Gauteng, which was my 10,451,713 people, and I'm going to times it by 83.5%. And that's going to give me my number of people. What does that 83.5% represent? So on the calculator, I'm going to have my 10,451,713 times by, and it was 80, I don't remember what that was. It was 83.5% times by 83.5%, and that gives me the number of people. So it's 8,727,180. Now I remember we've just done a calculation where we needed to round off to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to ignore my decimals because they're less than 5. So I'm going to write that in as 8,727,180. So it was 8,727,180. And just double check that I actually got that number correct. 8,727,180, and that is the number of people. So people. Remember, we always have a reference in Mathslit. So don't leave your answer as just the number. Explain to the examiner that you actually know exactly what you're talking about and that was the number of people. Right, let's move on to the next. Calculate the following, carry on calculating the following missing values. So now we're calculating D. So D's calculation is actually very similar to B's calculation, or the one we did with the 86.6. We're now looking for the percentage having access to water. So it's the number of people out of the total number of people in KwaZulu-Natal. And we're going to times by 100 because we're looking for a percentage. So let's write that out. We've got our total of 8145, 829, divided by my total, extend the page a little bit, of 10,259,230 times by 100. Don't be scared of big numbers. They like to give you big numbers. But the theory with a big number or a small number is exactly the same. Just be a little bit more careful when you actually type onto your calculator that the numbers you've used are correct. So in this case, I'm going to use the fraction button. So it is 8145, 829 divided by 10,259,230 and times by 100. The same concept, 79.4%. Let's write that into the calculation. We need a little bit more space. So it's 79.4%. And remember it said the nearest unit, so that becomes 79%. Right, let's move on. In which province is both the percentage use of electricity for lighting as well as the percentage access to tap water the smallest? So now we looked to compare. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in my value D that I'd calculated just before. So value D was 79%. So let's fill that into the table over here because I can't compare all the percentages if I don't have all the information. So we're looking for the percentage use of electricity as well as the percentage use of water, the smallest. So we're just going to literally go through the values and see which is the smallest. Most of them are in the 80s. Then I've got the Eastern Cape, which is 65.5. So electricity use, definitely the smallest in the Eastern Cape. And then going on to KwaZulu-Natal. And now looking at the access to water, we've got in the 90s, there's a 70, going through, that's a 70 as well, and the rest are 80s and 90s. So which has both places the smallest? Well, clearly we can now see that it is the Eastern Cape because they had the lowest for electricity and the lowest for pipe water. So we can just answer, and it is in the Eastern Cape. Right, so that is the end of this question. So now let's quickly go through some of your homework and see what the questions are involved for your homework. Right, the charts and tables below show some of the information that was collected in a 2001 about the number of learners and non-learners in South Africa. We've got to study them carefully and then answer the questions that follow. So I'm just going to go through each one of the tables for you to help you analyze, and then you can do the homework on your own. So the first table that we've got is the number of learners in different grades in ordinary school in South Africa in 2001. We've got females on the one side and males on the other. This is the number of learners per grade in thousands. Always look out for something like this where it says in thousands. So this basically means 750,000. I lost my pen. 750,000. So we can add the zeros. That didn't do so well. So 750,000 people. When reading a table like this, you're going to have to kind of estimate what they mean. So if I look at pre-primary and the females, 250 was there. So this is just a little bit more than half. So we're probably looking at 150,000 1,000 people. Then we've got a pie chart. This is the percentage distribution of learners by phase in ordinary school in South Africa. By phase meaning what part of school are they in. So we've got 2% in pre-primary, we've got 64% in primary and 34% in secondary, that's your high school. Let's move on to the next chart. We've got learners and non-learners in the age group 14 to 18 years old. That 14 to 18 years old is basically your secondary. That's your 14 to 18 as your high school in the provinces in South Africa. And it's broken down by each province. We've got the total number of 14 to 18-year-olds in each province. So let's look at the Eastern Cape with 752,000 odd learners that age. Number attending school, so we've got 657,000 that are attending an educational institution, 90,000 that are not attending school, and kind of 4,396 that are unknown educational status. So when the survey was done, nobody knew if they were at school or not. The percentage at an educational institution, and then the percentage not at an educational institution. When going through this again, just remember what I told you in the last section when calculating A and B in the last question. You cannot just add these up. You must work with the total numbers. Okay, let's look at our last table. This is the percentage of population aged 5 to 24. So now we've got from pre-primary through high school and probably a little bit of tertiary education. So 24, I hope you're not in high school, attending an educational institution in a single year, and we're looking at the census from 1996 and 2001. 1996 is our dark grey, 2001 is our lighter grey. It also gives you the numbers, which is really nice, and look out for that when you've got a table, because sometimes you think, well, okay, let me read what that value is, but in actual fact, if we look here, it already tells you that it's 22.5%. So we can see the age. So these are the age of the children and the percentages from one year to the next. And let's just quickly go through the questions. So what percentage of learners in South Africa were in primary school? You're going to have to use one of the tables, and my guess is probably your pie chart. So fairly simple, 1 mark question, just read the answer off. The next part of the question, next question said, were there more males than females in primary school, grade 1 to 7 in South Africa? And explain how you can see this from the chart. You're going to have to use that first chart. You're going to have to estimate how many of each there are and then compare them. That next part of the question says, write a sentence explaining the meaning of the number. This is a meaning again. Don't do any calculations, just purely give them what is the meaning of that number. On top of the 6th column in the table, so I think it was in this table. There you go, that 87.3. What does that mean? Next question says, the first column for Limpopo has not been filled in. Provide the correct values that should be in the column. So for Limpopo, we're missing this value. How are we going to calculate that value? Go through one of the other provinces and see how did that 752,496 come about, and see if you can do the same thing for Limpopo. And moving on. Now calculate the number that should be in the spaces labeled A and B. I've already discussed that with you. Don't add them up. You're going to have to work out the percentage. And next part of the question, which province has the greatest number of children that should be at secondary school but that are not attending school? Purely looking at the numbers. Decide which, go through the provinces and decide which one has the most number of school children that aren't attending school, and then carry on and finish the question. The next part of the question says, which province has has to cater for the greatest number of learners in secondary school? So which one has the greatest number of children attending a school? And that will give you that answer. With regards to every child being entitled to an education, in which way has the situation improved from 1996 to 2001? that's now where we're looking at the census. So we're looking for an improvement, and be very specific. They want to know in which way has the situation improved. So go through, we can see it's improved for the 5-year-olds, and you can go through age by age. Rather give more detail to the examiner than less. And with regards to the same statement, we need to look at which one has deteriorated from 96 to 2001, and again, give more information than is necessary. Go through every single grade. Don't just tell me that it's 14-year-olds to 20-year-olds or something. Say 14 and 15 and 16, it's far better. The examiner knows exactly what you're talking about. And that takes us to the end of your homework and the end of the session. I wish you lots of luck with percentage in context, and just remember those 5 rules that we did right in the beginning, and you should be fine. And it was good to be with you.